Hello, my name is Steven from 3D Printer Academy, and this is a complete beginner's guide to Autodesk Fusion 360. Fusion is an easy-to-use, beginner-friendly, yet powerful CAD software application that's free for personal use. You can find the download page by searching for Fusion 360 for personal use. You'll need to create an account and verify your email. After going through the install process, you'll be prompted to sign in again, and it'll ask you a few more things. In 2025, Fusion 360 is really pushing their hubs feature. It basically allows you to collaborate with a team, but for individual users, it doesn't really matter. When you open Fusion for the first time, it'll look something like this. Go ahead and click New. I personally think they've overcomplicated opening Fusion for the first time for new users. There's really too many pop-ups, and I know they're trying to help, but it's a little bit confusing. Go ahead and browse through the helpful panels if you want, but I'm just going to go ahead and close them and show you exactly what you need to know right away. So here we are in an empty new design. Now before we go and create our first design, it's important to know the save system for Fusion. Up here on the top left, right here, you'll see the data panel, and here's where you'll see all of your projects. For example, if I click new project here, we can name the project Project 1, and in the project, you could have multiple designs. So when I go ahead and save our empty design here, simply go up to File, and go to Save, and we could save this design in a location. So if we click this drop down here, you can see we have our new project that we just created, Project 1. So how it works is you basically have a project, and inside of a project, you could have multiple designs. So I could call this Design 1, and I could save it. Now, if I go ahead and click Save As, you'll see, if I drop down here, in our Project 1, there is Design 1. And now maybe I could call this Design 1A or something like that. So now we have two designs in that project. So the default project is the admin project. And here's the new project we created here. So I double click there, you can see our two new designs. So an important thing to note with the free personal use version of Fusion 360 is that you could only have 10 live or editable documents at a time. You could have more than 10 documents, even though it makes it seem like you can't really, but you actually can. So if I go ahead and, so you notice here on the left here, I have 10 designs that I've created. If I go ahead and try to create a new design, you'll see it says read only. Document limit has been reached. So what you have to do is go to one of your old documents and change it from editable to read only. And you could always change it back to editable again in the future. But now I can save this new design that I have here. Go ahead and save. And now I can call this one Design 11. So you notice now we have more than 10 designs right here. There it is. But we could only have 10 editable designs at a time. So if you ever want to create another project after you've done your first 10, just go ahead and make one of the old ones, go to editable, and then just click on read only. Make read only. So that's all you have to do to basically have unlimited designs with the free version. So that's basically how the save system works in Fusion 360. Now I'm going to go ahead and make design 11 here read only, go back to design 1 and make that editable. So now let's go back, make sure we're in design 1 here. Now we're in design 1 and it's editable. So to close the data panel, you go back to home and then click on the X button up here. All right, I think the best way to learn Fusion 360 is to go through a quick and easy example project. So in this project, we'll be creating a 3D printable phone stand. Now, what we're looking at here is the viewport. This is where we're going to create the object. And on the top right here, we have the view cube. You could use that to rotate the view around like so. You just click on it like this. Or we could pan by using the middle mouse button like so, or hold Shift and the middle mouse button to rotate the view. And you could use the scroll wheel or your trackpad to zoom. Now in Fusion 360, there are two ways that we could create a three-dimensional object. We can go up to create here, and we can start with a primitive, a pre-made simple basic shape like a box, a cylinder, a sphere, or a pipe. Or the other way to make a little bit more custom objects is to start with a 2D sketch. So if I go here and click on Create Sketch, we'll need to select a plane to create the sketch on. So you could click on one of the wall planes or the floor plane. So let's go ahead and click on the floor plane here. And now we could draw a 2D area or a shape and use that to create the 3D object. I'll show you how it works. So let's say I click on the line tool and I start from the origin here. I could go up and I could type in, let's say 20 millimeters, press enter, create another line right here. You could click line or you could press L on the keyboard. And let's say this time we want it to be 40, click, and then I can go down here and it'll snap there and I could finish the shape like this. Now we have a custom shape and I could even create a circle inside of the shape like so. And you can move the shape around by clicking the center button like this. I'll snap it here. And if we click finish sketch, we can now take this custom sketch here, click on the area like so, and go ahead and extrude it. So that's a really easy way to create three-dimensional objects in Fusion 360 using a sketch. The other way we could create this same object here is by using the primitives. So we go to box, and once again we have to select the plane we want to create the box on, and I'll go ahead and hide this body here since it's kind of in the way. I'll click on the floor plane once again. Let's turn on that body again. Now let's go ahead and create the base shape like so. So I'll just click and drag out the first two dimensions and we'll pull up here for the third dimension and go ahead and click OK. But now we need to create a hole. So we go to create and go past hole, don't do a hole. Let's do a cylinder and we can select the top surface of this object. And then we could drag it down. And when it's red here, it means it'll take away from that object. It'll subtract from it. So it'll create a cut on that object. And we go ahead and click OK. So that's the two different ways that you could create objects in Fusion 360, either starting from a sketch or using the primitives. And they both could end up with the same result. And you could also do a combination of sketches and primitives as well. For example, let me go ahead and hide these two objects here and create a new box on the floor plane again and just do it kind of quick. We'll go slow for the phone stand so you could follow along. If I click on this face here and click on sketch, now we're creating a sketch on that face and I could make a 2D sketch like so. I'll just make it kind of like this, just something random. And you could take this now custom sketch on that face and extrude it. You could either go out and make kind of like this triangle peg, or I could go in and it'll cut that jagged triangle hole in the object. Now, the really cool thing about Fusion 360 is you could go back in time to any command that you've done and change it. For example, let's say we're not happy with the shape of our custom sketch cutout right here. Well, you can go down to the timeline and you can double click on it. And now we could edit this sketch. So I go ahead and change the shape of this sketch. Maybe we want it to be like this or something, or let's just make it a little bit wider. How about that? Now, if we click finish sketch, it'll update that hole. You could also go back to any step along the way. So you could also scroll back like this just by clicking on this back arrow and it'll take us back in time. And you notice we can't see anything because our object visibility was turned off. But if I go ahead and let's go all the way to the end here and turn everything on, you'll notice we can see every step, every kind of command that we've taken along the timeline. And then you just jump all the way back to the current position that we have here. And I'll go ahead and hide those objects there. Now I've been using this tree right here. This is our object tree. And basically we have this folder, which contains our bodies. And we have 3 bodies right now. You could toggle the visibility here. And we have this folder, which contains our sketches. So just like on the timeline, we can go into the sketch and edit it as well. So if we want to change this whole another way, you could double click on this sketch here and you could change it as well. It really makes the design process a lot easier because if you ever need to modify or adjust something, you can simply go back to the timeline or back to your sketches and change a feature. All right, now with that, let's go ahead and do a complete project from start to finish using Fusion 360. Now, we're gonna be creating a phone stand. So the first step will be creating a mock-up of our phone. That way we can design the stand around it. So to do that, let's just go ahead and create a simple box primitive right here. So we'll go to create and box, and let's go ahead and create it. This time, let's do a vertical plane since the phone will be standing up vertically. And let's go ahead and click the origin point right here at the center, and we'll drag out and set the first 2 dimensions. Now I have an iPhone 15 Pro, so in this case it'll be, let's see how tall it is, 146.6 tall. And to go to the other dimension, you just press tab. That's how you switch between the 2 dimensions here. And for the width, it's 70.6 millimeters. Now go ahead and press enter, and now we need to set the thickness. So the thickness of the iPhone 15 Pro is 8.25 millimeters. And go ahead and click enter or return. For measuring objects, I highly recommend getting some digital calipers like these. I like these ones so much, I've purchased them 3 times already. They're on sale. I'll have a link in the description below. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. Let me just zoom out a little bit and pan and rotate a little bit as well. So now let's go ahead and round the corners. It'll introduce you to a new tool, which is called Fillet. So we could select the edges of our shape like so. And if you hold shift, we could select multiple edges at once and then rotate around while still holding shift. And we could select all 4 of these edge corners. Now, if you go up here and click fillet, we could round the corners. So I'm going to type in 10 and just have a more realistic phone looking mock-up here, and go ahead and click OK. Now, another tool similar to a fillet is the chamfer tool. So if we select on this edge here and this edge here, and if we add a chamfer, this is pretty cool. What it does is it automatically will chamfer the entire loop right here. So I'll go to modify. And if you go to chamfer, you'll see it's right next to the fillet tool because they're very similar. Go to chamfer, and now you'll see it automatically selects the entire, it's called the tangent chain here. You could turn it off or on if you want as well. But it automatically selects the entire tangent chain, basically the whole loop of edges. And we could set the chamfer amount. In this case, let's just do 1. So there we have our 1 millimeter chamfer, and it's looking a lot more like a regular phone. Let's go ahead and click OK. And now that we have a mock-up of our phone, let's go ahead and create a phone stand. By the way, this video is sponsored by Fusion 360 Masterclass. So if you want to go deeper into Fusion 360, every year we come out with a new Masterclass. So 2025 is coming out soon. If you want a big discount, go ahead and click notify me on launch. You can find more details in the description below. We also have more in-depth free tutorials on the 3D Printer Academy tutorials channel. So in Fusion 360, you can measure the distance between points. You can measure the lengths of edges and the distance between faces. So to do that, all you need to do is select one or more things and it'll tell you some details about that. So for example, if you want to see how long this edge is right here, just select on that edge and you can see it says one edge on the bottom right here, one edge of a length of 6.25. Now that's not the total thickness of the phone because of the chamfer. If you want to know the total thickness, we can select on this face here, rotate around and hold shift and select the face on the back. And we can see the distance is 8.25. So let's go ahead and create the actual phone stand. So let's go to create up here in the top left. And I think for this, instead of starting with a sketch, let's go ahead and start with a box. So I'll select box here and I'll rotate around like so. And let's select on this face right here. Now I'll start from the origin point and let's kind of eyeball the dimensions here. We want it to be wide enough in this direction so it's stable, but not too wide. Let's do 42. So I'll press tab to switch between the 2 dimensions and I'll type in 42. It's pretty short, so it's not gonna be the most stable, but I want it to be kind of small and kind of out of the way. And for the height, let's do also another pretty small dimension here. Let's try 20. So we'll have a pretty low profile phone stand. I'll press enter. Now you notice here, it's automatically detecting what it thinks it should do. And right now it's cutting away from our model. If we go to the settings of our box over here, we could change the operation to create a new body. So you notice there's different options. We could either join it, we could cut it, intersect, new body, or a new component. But let's go ahead and do a new body. Now we could drag it out here, and a cool trick you could do is instead of manually setting the dimension here, we can select on this face and it'll automatically snap to that face there. So once again, if I drag this arrow here, I can click on this face, this point, this edge, and it'll automatically snap to that length. So it's the same width as a phone, which is 70.6 millimeters. Now let's go ahead and click OK. So we have the mock-up of the phone and we have the kind of the start of the stand here, but the phone is kind of in the way. So let's go ahead and turn that off. And now with the phone turned off, I noticed it's not quite tall enough of a box to start with, in my opinion. So what we could do is if you select on this face here and right click, you notice we have all these tools that we could select from. So one thing we could do is go to move and copy. And this is a great feature of Fusion 360 that makes designing things really easy because you can always just manually move faces like so. So watch this, you go to move copy, and now we could just drag it up like so and change the position of whatever we have selected. And we could even rotate it as well, like so. So it's a little bit confusing to see from here, but you can see I'm rotating it like this. So I want that to be 0, and I think this is a little bit tall. I think right here should be fine. I believe that's taller than it was before. Yeah, it's 30 instead of 20. So now let's go ahead and actually create the cutout for the phone stand. So a good way to do that would be to create a sketch along this face here, and then we'll extrude it and cut it along lengthwise. So let's go ahead and create a sketch. After selecting this face here, we'll create a sketch. And let's go ahead and create a custom sketch here, and I'll introduce you to a new thing as well, which is called constraints. So if we go up and create a line here, and if you drag your cursor over this line here, you'll notice a triangle appears right at the midpoint. And that means it's automatically going to create a midpoint constraint. So if we click here where the triangle is, and drag down, and let's go ahead and type a dimension as well. Let's do 18 and click. You'll notice the line first off is a black line. Second off, we have a triangle here, and we have this kind of T shape here as well as a dimension here. If I create another line again, and this time just click anywhere in here, and this time I don't type a dimension or anything, you'll notice the line is blue. So basically this line here is properly constrained, and this line is completely unconstrained. If I try to move this one, I can. If I try to move this one, I can't because it's completely constrained. So in Fusion 360, the proper way to design something is to design things fully constrained. That way, if we want to go back in our timeline and change the dimension of something, you could always just go back to that dimension and change it. Now this triangle here, that's our midpoint constraint. You'll notice here, I selected it and you can see it's actually telling us what it is. It's the midpoint constraint. Basically means that this line here has to be on this midpoint. Now this T here means it has to be perpendicular or a 90-degree angle. Now in this case, we don't want it to be perpendicular. So let's go ahead and select on this constraint here and delete it. And you'll notice our line has become blue. And I'm going to delete this line here by selecting and deleting it because we don't need that one. Now let's go ahead and set the angle that we want our phone to be at. So we could create a new constraint by selecting this top line here, and it's the line that's being projected from the shape underneath. And let's select this line here, and if we press D and move our mouse, you'll see we could create a new dimension sketch, or in this case, it's the angle constraint. And now we could manually select whatever angle we want. So in this case, it's 90. Let's do 90, and we could just do plus 10, which will give us a 10-degree angle. So now we have it fully constrained at a 10-degree angle. Now this might seem overkill, but trust me, you want your sketches to be fully constrained. So now let's go ahead and create another line. And this time I'll show you how we could start with a line just kind of floating in space and then fully constrain it afterward. So let's just create a line like so. And actually in this case, I know how long I want the line to be. I want it to be 10 millimeters, and then click. We want the center point of this line to connect to this dot here. So what we could do is select this line and select midpoint constraint and then select this point. And now we have, let me zoom in here. We can even rotate. Actually, no, I want to look. I'll click on the view cube to go straight to look straight on again. Now we have this line perfectly centered on this point. Now let's add one more constraint for this small line here, and let's make it perpendicular to this line. So I'll select this line first, hold shift, select the next line. And if we go up here to our constraints, we could create a perpendicular constraint. All right, there we go. Now let's go ahead and draw a line by pressing L from this point to the top of our box. And I'm just going to go anywhere for now. It'll be blue for now. And create another line from here all the way up to there. But we want these lines to all be parallel. So we can just select all three lines here and then click on the parallel constraint. So now all of these lines are parallel. Now the center line we don't really need. That's a guideline. So what we could do is we could change that to a construction line here. So I just went over here to the sketch palette tools and selected construction. So now you can see it's dashed And if I hover my mouse over this area, it selects the whole area. Compared to before, if we change the line back to a regular line, we have two separate areas. We could select on this line, select on construction, and now we have this one area here controlled by the construction line, which is 19 millimeters. So I know that was a lot of detail on sketches, but sketches are really important in Fusion 360. Now, one more thing I think we could do to make this better is instead of using a midpoint constraint here, let's set a distance of this point to, let's say, this point over here. So we could create a line starting from this point, and let's just create it, let's do 14. And now we could force this point, which is controlling basically this entire sketch here. Let's select this point here and force them to be connected. Now this is called a coincident constraint. So if we go up to coincident right here, it'll force that point from our original sketch onto that point. And now instead of it using the midpoint of this top line, we could set the offset of our shape here. Now look how cool this is. We could change anything we want about this sketch to customize our phone stand. If we want to change the angle here, make it steeper, no problem. If we want to change the offset here, no problem. We can just double click and change it. If we want to change the depth, no problem. Super cool. So there we have our complete, properly constrained sketch. I hope that wasn't too confusing, but sketches are really important. Let's go ahead and click Finish Sketch. Take this area here, go to Extrude, and it'll cut through the entire shape, and I'll just drag past it, it doesn't really matter, and click OK. So now we have our custom phone stand. And if you want to make it a little bit less angular, we can just take these edges here and add fillets to them. So I'll select all 4 of these corners and go to fillet, and let's do a 5 millimeter fillet like so. And I'll also add a chamfer to this top edge as well, just so it's not quite as sharp of an object. So I'll do a chamfer. In this case, let's do 1 millimeter. Now let's say we want to 3D print this object here. Well, the first thing we have to do, which we probably should have done at the beginning of the project, is actually save the project. So let's go ahead and go to File, Save, and it's saving it in Project 1. That's okay. Let's go ahead and call it Phone Stand 1 and click Save. Now for 3D printing, we need to export the file as an STL file. So it's really easy to export a single body in Fusion 360. All you have to do is go over here to what says Body 3. Actually, let's rename that also to phone stand and right click it and click Save as Mesh. Now by default, it's a 3MF. Let's go ahead and switch it to an STL file, and we can even set the refinement settings. Let's go ahead and set to high. That way these rounded corners look nice. And let's go ahead and click OK. It'll ask where to save it. I'm just going to save it to my downloads and click Save. Now simply drag the STL file into your slicer of choice. In this case, I'm using Bamboo Studio, and go ahead and click Slice and then click Print. So here it is fully 3D printed, and now you can get some cool shots for future videos. I hope you found this video helpful. Once again, my name is Steven, the creator of 3D Printer Academy. Go ahead and check out our site, 3dprinteracademy.com. We have a bunch of free resources, STL designs, courses, and more. Thanks for watching, and happy printing.